It was a brisk Monday morning when 14-year-old Jasmine Porter stepped into the grand halls of Oak Bank, her school uniform crisp and neatly pressed. A simple blazer, pleated skirt, and polished loafers made up her attire. But beneath the composed exterior, her heart beat with a mixture of nerves and pride. Today was an important milestone, her first solo bank transaction. Clutched in her hands was a $5,000 scholarship check, a reward for her exceptional academic achievements. This money was not just a sum, it was a symbol of her dedication, a testament to the countless nights spent studying, the unwavering determination that had set her apart. She had insisted on handling this deposit alone, without the guidance of her parents, eager to prove her independence. Approaching the counter, she carefully placed the check on the smooth surface, inhaling deeply to steady herself. The bank's manager, Victoria Hayes, a woman of refined elegance and an air of practiced superiority, observed Jasmine's arrival from a distance. Her sharp gaze lingered on the girl a moment longer than necessary before she stepped forward. As Jasmine handed over the check, she caught the brief flicker of surprise on Victoria's face before it was swiftly masked by a tight, professional smile. "A $5,000 check?" Victoria's voice rose slightly, drawing the attention of nearby patrons. "For a student your age, where did this come from?" There was something accusatory in her tone, a subtle but unmistakable challenge. Heat flooded Jasmine's cheeks, but she refused to waver. "It's my academic scholarship," she responded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She quickly retrieved her folder, presenting the award letter and her school ID as proof. She had come prepared for this very reason, to ensure there was no question of legitimacy. The teller, a young man named Tom, accepted the check with slow, deliberate movements. His neutral expression twisted into something more guarded as he lifted the check to the light, scrutinizing it as though it carried some hidden deception. Seconds stretched painfully as he exchanged a glance with Victoria, who had been watching the entire exchange with growing skepticism. Victoria stepped closer, her lips pursing. "We've had a lot of fraudulent checks lately," she muttered, her tone laced with condescension. "We'll need to verify everything." Jasmine's pulse quickened. This wasn't how she had imagined it. She had expected a simple, routine deposit, not an interrogation. Panic fluttered in her chest as she suddenly remembered her phone was still in her locker at school. I, I need to call my mom," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's expecting me home soon, and I don't have my phone." Victoria barely glanced at her. "That's not our concern," she replied coolly. "You'll wait until we're done with verification." The words struck like a slap. Jasmine remained frozen, her hands tightening around the folder as Victoria turned away, her posture exuding authority, her every step a silent declaration that Jasmine was an inconvenience, an unwelcome presence in this polished, marble-floored establishment. As the bank bustled around her, Jasmine felt an unsettling awareness settle over her. People whispered, their gazes flickering in her direction before turning away, some with curiosity, others with thinly veiled judgment. The moments dragged on, each second adding weight to her growing humiliation. She had noticed these things before, the differences in treatment, the way some were welcomed with warm smiles, while others were met with cold indifference. But today it wasn't an abstract observation. Today she was the one being dismissed, the one being made to feel small. From across the room, she overheard Victoria's hushed conversation with Tom. "We need to uphold our standards here," Victoria murmured. "We can't just let anyone walk in and assume they belong." Jasmine's stomach twisted. The words were like a slow-burning poison, seeping into her, confirming what she already knew in her heart. This wasn't about a scholarship check. It wasn't about bank protocol. It was about who they thought she was, who they assumed she couldn't be. Her fingers curled into fists. She wanted to speak, to demand they treat her with the respect she deserved. But she hesitated. Her father had always taught her the power of restraint, of composure in the face of adversity. Yet standing there isolated and demeaned, she felt an anger so raw, so deep, that it threatened to consume her. She had earned this scholarship. She had worked tirelessly for this moment, and now it was being tainted by suspicion and prejudice. More time passed, more whispers, more sidelong glances. Jasmine thought of her mother, Dr. Naomi Porter, a woman of immense knowledge and influence in the financial world, a woman who had built her career on integrity and hard work. Her mother had always taught her that success wasn't about privilege, but about perseverance, and Jasmine had embraced that lesson wholeheartedly. She had refused to rely on her family's name, had insisted on making her own mark. This was supposed to be her moment of independence. Instead, she felt powerless. She shifted her weight, glancing at the clock. Her mother would be expecting her soon, but she was still standing here, waiting, unseen. In the distance, she watched as a well-dressed elderly couple entered. Victoria's demeanor transformed instantly, her posture opening, her voice warm and accommodating. Moments later, a man with a thick accent approached the counter, holding paperwork similar to what Jasmine had provided. Victoria barely looked at him before dismissing him with a sigh. "The system is running slow today," she said, uninterested. But when a white couple arrived moments later, she greeted them with a smile, eager to assist. "Let me take care of that for you right away," she assured them. Jasmine's jaw tightened. The injustice was no longer just a suspicion, it was playing out before her eyes. It was real, it was deliberate, and it was cruel. She clenched her fists at her sides, forcing herself to remain still, though every fiber of her being screamed for her to protest. She had witnessed discrimination before, subtle, insidious acts hidden beneath layers of bureaucracy and policy. But never had it felt this personal, this suffocating. Victoria's voice rang out again, sharp and commanding. "Keep an eye on her," she told the security guard. "Make sure she doesn't try to leave." Jasmine's breath hitched. Her pulse roared in her ears. She was no longer just a student making a deposit. In their eyes, she was a suspect, a problem to be contained, a young black girl in the wrong place, daring to exist in a space they deemed off-limits to her. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The walls of the bank felt like they were closing in, suffocating her beneath the weight of silent judgment and quiet cruelty. And as she stood there, abandoned by fairness, unseen in her own triumph, she realized the most painful truth of all. No one cared enough to stop it. Something caught Jasmine's eye. Across the room, Victoria leaned over the teller's counter, her voice hushed as she spoke to Tom. Her expression was tight with frustration, her lips pursed in thinly veiled disdain. "Why is she still here?" Victoria's voice barely rose above a whisper, but Jasmine caught every word. "We need to get rid of her. Make sure she knows she's not welcome." Jasmine's stomach clenched, the weight of those words pressing down on her chest. So this wasn't about a misplaced check or a clerical mistake. It was about something far more insidious. It was about power, exclusion, and the unspoken rule that people like her weren't meant to occupy spaces like these. She was an outsider, a problem to be erased. A sharp sense of injustice burned in her throat, but before she could think, the words spilled out. "I'm not a problem," Jasmine said, her voice trembling yet steady. "I earned my scholarship. I have every right to deposit my check like anyone else." Victoria didn't so much as glance in her direction. Instead, she turned sharply to the security guard, her tone clipped and authoritative. "Take her to the back. Keep her there until we're done with the paperwork." The guard, a towering man with a steely expression, moved without hesitation. His grip was firm as he seized Jasmine's arm and began marching her across the bank. A hush fell over the room. every pair of eyes turning toward the scene unfolding before them. Yet, no one spoke. No one intervened. Heat flooded Jasmine's face as humiliation washed over her, but she forced herself to stand tall, refusing to shrink beneath their judgmental gazes. The guard led her to a secluded corner, his voice flat as he issued his command. "Stand here." Jasmine's arms folded tightly across her chest, her back rigid, chin high. But inside she was unraveling, every second stretching into an eternity. She had never felt so powerless, so unwanted. The bitter taste of injustice thickened in her throat as time dragged on. Her eyes roved the bank, searching for something, anything, to anchor her fraying composure. Then she saw her. Victoria, moving with an air of practiced authority, approached a tall, sharply dressed man. There was something about him, something that sparked recognition in Jasmine's mind. Harrison Wells. Her pulse quickened. She had heard her mother mention his name before, a rival in the banking world, a man who would do anything to seize an advantage. Victoria handed him a manila folder, her voice dipping into a whisper. Jasmine couldn't hear the words, but she could see it, the way Wells nodded, the way his fingers curled around the confidential file, the way Victoria's smile stretched, all too eager. A sickening realization settled over her. This wasn't just about her. This was betrayal. Jasmine's breath hitched as she watched the exchange. The pieces clicked into place with chilling clarity. Victoria wasn't simply discriminating against her. She was using her power to undermine the very institution she worked for, her mother's institution. A cold determination settled in her bones. She may have been forced into silence, but that didn't mean she was powerless. Jasmine's fingers trembled as she opened the leather-bound notebook she always carried. Every slight, every injustice she had witnessed that day had already been scribbled onto its pages. But this was something far greater. She recorded everything: the time, the names, the folder marked confidential. Every glance, every shift in body language, every whisper exchanged between Victoria and Wells. By the time the meeting ended and Wells strode past her, the weight of his betrayal hanging thick in the air, Jasmine had documented it all. And then, as if summoned by fate, the doors to the bank swung open. Naomi Porter, Jasmine's mother, entered the room with a presence that was impossible to ignore. She was composed, poised, her tailored suit immaculate, her expression unreadable. But the moment her eyes landed on Jasmine, isolated, standing alone, something sharp flashed across her face. "Miss Porter," Victoria greeted smoothly, her voice laced with artificial politeness. "What a surprise! How can I assist you today?" Naomi didn't waste a second on pleasantries. Her gaze remained fixed on Jasmine. "Are you all right?" Jasmine swallowed the emotion rising in her throat and nodded. "I'm fine, Mom." She took a breath, then met her mother's eyes with unwavering resolve. "But there's something you need to hear." She opened her notebook and began to read. She told her mother everything about the blatant mistreatment, the hushed whispers, the meeting with Wells, every detail, every moment of injustice. Her voice never wavered. Naomi listened in silence, her expression growing colder, harder with each revelation. By the time Jasmine finished, an eerie quiet had settled over the bank. Then Naomi turned to Victoria, her tone like ice. "Miss Hayes, I believe you owe my daughter an apology." Victoria faltered. I don't know what you mean." Naomi cut her off. "Don't insult my intelligence. I know exactly what you've been doing." Her words were measured but razor sharp. "You've been leaking confidential information to our competitors. That folder you handed to Wells? That was corporate espionage." The room was deathly silent. Victoria's face drained of color. Her carefully constructed mask of confidence crumbled, leaving only raw fear in its wake. She opened her mouth, searching for a defense, but Naomi didn't give her the chance. "You're fired." Naomi's voice rang with finality. Effective immediately. The same guard who had forcibly removed Jasmine now stepped toward Victoria. His movements held no hesitation as he escorted her out, her pride reduced to dust beneath the weight of her own actions. Naomi turned back to the room, her voice carrying with authority. This bank will undergo a full review. Policies will change, and no one will ever be treated the way my daughter was today. Jasmine watched, her heart pounding as her mother took control. And in the months that followed, change did come. Investigations unearthed not only Victoria's treachery, but a pattern of systemic discrimination. Leadership was overhauled. Equity-focused policies were introduced. And Melody, the only teller who had shown Jasmine kindness, was promoted to a managerial role. Jasmine's experience had set off a ripple effect, one that reshaped more than just a bank. It reshaped her. She was no longer just a girl depositing a check. She had become a voice, a force for change. And as she stood before her peers at West Academy, sharing her story, she smiled, knowing that even in the face of injustice, she had refused to be silenced. She had turned humiliation into power. And that, she realized, was how real change began.